What's up, everybody? It's Trifecta J here, back with the South Dakota Dynasty. Today we're going to have a little bit of a recruiting update and season update, as it were. So we are currently 1-3. Our next game will be at home against Utah State. Should be a very interesting game. They do have Jordan Love at quarterback, so they have some talent around him as well. And then we look at the top 25, and we see that Clemson is number 1, then Oklahoma, LSU, Alabama, Utah, Ohio State, Arizona. Georgia actually just lost to Arkansas, so another big top 10 upset. We've seen a bunch of those so far this year. In terms of our season statistics, J.R. Miller is 67 for 99 for 915, so very good yards per attempt for him, much better than it was last year. And then he has 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions and has been sacked 13 times. Rushing the ball, Jalen Page has been better this year, 4.4 yards per carry compared to 3.4 last year. And then Pierce Libby hasn't been quite as good. He does have 2 touchdowns, but 28 carries for 73 yards and only 2.6 yards per carry. Trenton Klimper was 69 yards on 3.2 yards per attempt. Cooper Price, Deontay Knox, and Cordell Hicks have been our best receivers. Each have over 100 yards and a touchdown, over 22 yards per catch for Cordell Hicks and 22 exactly for Deontay Knox. Then on the defensive side of the ball, Bryson Williams leads us in tackles. And in terms of tackles for loss, it's Jackson Harvey with 5 along with Sylvia Widenar. Have actually gotten a decent number of sacks this year. We have 8 so far, but still have not actually forced an interception, and I believe we only have 1 fumble recovery. That was the one forced by Pedro Martels. So you can see the spread of our prospects. Once again, it's a very tight little knit area. All the border states basically for South Dakota, and then we are targeting Canada this year as well. And you may see one little dot off to the west coast in California. We'll get to him later. He was the only player I found outside of this range, and it was nice this year. We did actually end up with 35 players available to us compared to 27 last year, or 21 last year, I believe. But we do have 7 seniors graduating, 7 on offense, and then 9 on defense, and then our punter is graduating. A lot of seniors in the linebacking core and the secondary. We're losing our top 2 strong safeties, 2 of our top 3 corners, a starter at middle linebacker, and a couple other players that are important as well. Along the offensive side of the ball, we'll be losing 3 senior wide receivers, including Richie Campbell, Mike Algram, and Delvonte Bell, and then Trenton Klimper. At tackle, we have 1 graduating at guard, and 1 at center. So with that, now we'll get into looking at the actual recruiting board, and this is a big week upcoming for us as we have a bunch of different prospects who will be visiting for the Utah State game. One of the most important ones is Deion Kendrick. He's 5'10", 187. He is the number 1 player on our board. We have 2 seniors graduating at corner, and it's very important that we get a guy who can make an early impact, and that's what he is to me. He has decent speed, especially compared to our other corners. Good man coverage, decent zone and press, and I think could be a very good developmental prospect for us. Another guy who most likely will be starting day 1 is Jamie Landry, 6'4", 302 from South Dakota. We have a big time lead. He's a 1-star prospect. He's a pass blocking specialist. He's a pretty good athlete, needs to improve in his run blocking and impact blocking, but fits very well at left guard, or right guard, depending, which we will have a hole this year after our Brandon Groenhagen graduates. Then we have Deion Perkins. He is a big linebacker, 6'6", 236 from Nebraska. We have a big lead for him as well. He's a pretty good athlete. He can tackle, can cover a little bit, has a chance to start in his true freshman season. We'll have to see those. We actually have some nice depth at linebacker now. And this list is in sort of a order of our top priorities on the board, but it's just a mix of all the different players. Then we have another corner. It's Terrence Mitchell. He has a chance to be a starter day 1 as a dime corner, or potentially a nickel corner if we move Eric Sikowski. But he has the best speed on the board for our corners at 91. Not good zone coverage at all, and that could prevent him from starting as a true freshman. But decent man coverage to start out, and just needs to develop, but has a nice base in terms of athleticism. So then we have Shedrick Simpson. He is 6'3", 249 from Wyoming. He fits very well with that size as a right end Although he's not a superb athlete, he's decently strong, good burst, but in terms of true speed, it's not great. His pass rushing moves definitely have room for development, but is another guy who's just a nice base and a nice developmental prospect for us. Then we have our first junior college player on the board. It's 6'1", 216 from Iowa, and it's Tevin Robinson. We have a big lead for him, a lot of big leads for these guys. They're not very highly coveted, and I'm not really sure what Tevin Robinson's role will be. He's decently strong for a linebacker, has some pass rushing moves, some coverage ability as well, but the athleticism I feel like could really hold him back. To me, he could only really be a pass rusher and run stopper and just not play on passing downs. Although he does have decent zone coverage, so I feel like in those early downs, if he's forced to play in coverage, he would do okay, especially in a zone coverage role. Next, we have Xavier Thomas. He's 6'2", 232 from Minnesota. We are starting to really get into this race and have a nice lead for him. Once again, not a great athlete, doesn't have the same burst as Cedric Simpson, but he's a better run stopper than Simpson is, and is a little bit stronger, can also hit harder. Then we have Michael Long, 6'5", 286, a big lead on him. He's out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. One-star prospect, a lot of one-stars on our board currently, and he's not a superb athlete, but he's strong, can run block, and is just a guy that we want to get in, redshirt, and develop, and hopefully he can be a starter for us in the future. We weren't able to recruit any defensive tackles last year. We definitely needed some, as we have one graduating and only 3 on the roster. So first we have Terrence Bell, 6'1", 287, one-star prospect with a big lead out of Iowa. And really, he's not superb in any area. He's just a body to have on the roster, and is a guy who may redshirt. He may actually have to start in actually play in year 3, as we don't have a ton of depth. We'll only have 2 defensive tackles returning. Then we have Justice O'Connor from North Dakota. He's also 6'1", but only 274, and he's really close to committing. So far, we still don't have any commitments, but we, as you can see, have a ton of guys who are very close. And he's another guy, he's got decent strength. They both actually have decent athleticism for defensive tackles, but in terms of pass rushing ability and run stopping ability, they both have a long way to go. Then another corner, 5'11" from Iowa, it's Latrell Hill. Once again, a guy that we're just getting into the battle, same as Terrence Mitchell, but we do have a nice lead. He's a decent athlete, once again, especially considering the guys we currently have on our board. He's very good in man coverage compared to his other ratings, but he's definitely a guy who's going to have to redshirt and sit for a little bit before I trust him enough to actually play. Then Ben James, he is 6'5", 290, one-star once again out of Iowa, and he is a decent player. He's strong, an okay athlete, not anything that really stands out, and all around very balanced ratings, but once again needs to develop. A lot of these guys, they will add depth to our roster. They can redshirt, and then maybe in their sophomore, junior season, they'll be able to contribute in a bigger role. And now here we have a guy who you could claim is the #1 player on our board and most important guy. We have to secure the future of the quarterback position. J.R. Miller has 2 years after this one. But here is Jalen Tate, 6'1", 228 from Hollywood, California. So he's out in the West Coast in Los Angeles, and he looks to be a big-time star for us maybe in the future. He's a big body at 228. We fit him in some of his areas. He's a decent athlete at 82 speed. Not superb really at make you miss ability, but has great break tackling, and I feel like he could be a nice power running quarterback for us. His throwing ratings leave a little bit to be desired. He has a decent arm. It would be better than J.R. Miller's is, but the accuracy has a long way to go. And the nice thing about having J.R. Miller for 2 years after this one is he has time redshirt next year, then in year 4, maybe install some Wildcat packages, some different formations for him, and it just gives him time to improve that throw accuracy before he's actually forced to start. And one other thing to mention about quarterback is we currently have 3 on the roster, but they are all sophomores, so they will all be graduating at the same time. And that leaves a big hole open for Jalen Tate, and also in the future we're going to have to get more quarterbacks. Next player, number 14 on our board, it's Keel Foster, 6', 210. He's 1-star once again, another 1-star prospect out of Minnesota, and he's another guy who I feel like just needs time to develop. He is a decent athlete for the safety position, and most of his other ratings are in the 60s or below, and just needs time to develop. I don't see him playing anytime soon. We recruited DeMarco Anderson last year, who potentially has a chance to start as a redshirt freshman next season, as we are graduating Bryson Williams and Briar Darby. So he just needs to sit on the bench, develop that athleticism, zone coverage skills, and his tackling ability. There weren't a ton of talented receiving prospects on our board, but the best one I found that was not a junior college transfer is Trey Bryant. He's out of Montana and out of actually Kalispell. We're competing with North Dakota State for him, but we do have a nice lead. He is decent speed compared to our roster, but everywhere else, acceleration, make you miss ability, and also his catching ratings, he just needs time to develop, and he will have time to do that. We have Deontay Knox for a couple of years. We have a couple guys for next year, including Cooper Price and Nate Went. We recruited Phoenix McDonald, and also have Jacoby Patton along with some other guys which will just give him time to sit on the bench, develop, maybe get a little faster to be a downfield threat for us. And then the final guy that we're really targeting, it's a punter, Kenny Matson, our left-footed punter, will be graduating. And we found Trey Tucker. He was the only punter available to us. He's 5'11", 168 from North Dakota, and sort of a battle with Bowling Green and Northern Illinois, but we're starting to pull away at this point, and he's going to have to start next year, and it's not going to probably be very pretty. Those ratings aren't great, but hopefully given a little bit of time, he'll have the ability to develop. We may actually have to have Devin West punting, but for now, he may be the starter at punter. One other guy I want to mention, just in case you saw the 65 rating, it's DJ Davis. He's from South Dakota. He's a guy who may fill that last spot. We do have one spot left on our board that's open to a final recruit, and we may leave that open for transfers or depending. But DJ Davis would enter as a junior and would be probably 4th or 5th on the depth chart without actually playing a whole ton. So I don't feel a big necessity to go get him. I may change my mind and we may start putting more points into him. All we most likely will have to do with that lead we have is just offer him a scholarship. I don't see really Wisconsin deciding to put a lot of points into him, or Colorado, LSU, or North Carolina. He's not a super great player. And now we'll just look at the rest of the players on our board, as we have some more down here. A lot of them are lower 50s rated, just other guys who we have options to recruit just because that in case we missed out on one of those players and they were just available to us, wanted to scout them all and see how we wanted to go about that. And ignore the points in them. I don't really know what happened there. We're not actually actively targeting any of those players. But like I said, we don't currently have any committed recruits. Not a whole lot of teams do. We're only in week 5. And before we end this and the end of the look at the recruiting, we'll look at the top of the class in terms of recruits. David Hurst from Indiana. He's actually has some interest from Ball State and showing some interest in them, but it looks like it's going to come down to Purdue, Ball State, and Notre Dame. You would have to think based on that he would want to choose Notre Dame, but Purdue may be getting the #1 player in the country. Then we have Corey Tyler, of course, looking at Alabama. That makes sense. And Arizona actually recruiting the #1 tight end again. They got the #1 tight end, #3 in the player, I believe, last year. And they don't actually have a scholarship offer out for him, but he's heavily leaning towards Arizona. Have to wonder if that's coming soon. Then Josh Rose, along with Ryan Mullins, a very good quarterback in Lance Hogan. Brandon Lowe, Brian Johnson, Roman Smith, and Michael Taylor round out the top 10. So a lot of offensive skill position players. Not necessarily sure where these athletes will play, but looks like it could be all offense in the top 10 recruits. But that will do it for today's episode. Just a look today at the recruiting board so you are more familiar with the players who may be playing for the Coyotes in the next few years. Haven't really seen a ton of it yet. We have a ton of players on the board, so I wanted to dedicate a whole episode to it so you could really get to know them all on a more detailed basis than just at the end of an episode. But I hope you did enjoy. If you did, please leave a like down below. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the South Dakota Dynasty. I will see you in the next few days for our game against Utah State. It should be a fun one. I hope you have a great rest.